We're going to begin. This is the senior defense of Ms. Corynn, and I am her advisor. And it has been a wonderful year-long experience in which most weeks began with me gently reminding her, "Are you working on that thing?" And then the sort of slight, sort of guilty look. But then it was followed by, later in the week, mostly like Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, with an ecstatic revelation about the text that she confronted me with. So there was this sort of like ebb and flow. It was very great. She went in 1,000 different directions, which is the sign of a genuinely curious mind. So, but we finally arrived at some views on Machiavelli, and then we're going to hear from Corynn today. All right, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it.
So, thank you guys for coming today. I know it's hard to get here at 4 in the afternoon. It's a weird time. Now, as I sat down to write this speech, I found myself quite at a loss when trying to put to pen all that I wished to say. For days, I've been contemplating the very words that I then could not for my very life seem to find. I decided then that I should start with a question. After all, that is where this whole thesis business was supposed to start anyway. Beginning of sophomore year, I read quite the distressing little book titled The Prince, a book written by quite the vexing little Italian man named Niccolo Machiavelli. Upon finishing the book, I asked myself with exacerbation, what am I supposed to do with this book? How am I to treat the words of this man, which seemed to me so wrong and yet so right at the same time? I wanted so badly to agree with him, but I so strongly knew I should not. Machiavelli talks about how a ruler does not have to be good if he truly wants to succeed, and honestly may have to abandon goodness altogether. His justification for this advice goes thus, I quote, "One can say this generally of men, that they are ungrateful, fickle, pretenders and dissemblers, evaders of danger, eager for gain. They are wicked and do not observe faith with you." End quote. Thus, man, being evil, can only be successfully ruled by one equally evil. A ruler must then believe only in himself, because there is no one else to look to. Machiavelli seemed to have it all figured out. Yet I was not satisfied. In fact, I was not ready to accept that man was simply and only evil. I was not ready to accept that man has only to believe in himself. If man is evil, then how can he dare to look inwardly with any certainty? As I wandered lost with this distressing little book in my hand, a round-faced, jolly, yet serious Englishman came across me and inquired upon my perplexity. When I told him that I could not believe that man was simply evil, and in no way could I accept that man had only to believe in himself, he nodded and began, quote, "Shall I tell you where the men are who believe most in themselves? For I can tell you. I know of men who believe in themselves more colossally than Napoleon or Caesar. The men who really believe in themselves are in lunatic asylums. It would be much truer to say that a man will certainly fail because he believes in himself." End quote. Pleased with his answer, but wanting more, I responded, "My dearest Chesterton, in what is man then to believe?" He answered me with a smile and a little book titled Orthodoxy, the Romance of Faith. Thus armed, I began to lay out Machiavelli's arguments, finding where each had fallen from the truth. Machiavelli states that man is evil. He does not mention man being good. Goodness for Machiavelli is simply something to be used as a means to an end. It should never be done for itself. A prince who wishes to be great must spend his time cultivating his virtue, and keep in mind that virtue for Machiavelli simply means excellence and cannot be held in accord with any Aristotelian definition. With properly groomed virtue, a ruler can protect himself against the wicked men he rules and the raging torrents of fortune. Machiavelli believes that a virtuous prince will be able to succeed despite any and all obstacles that may come up against him, because he will have been able to see danger coming, and seeing that danger, he would have done anything to protect himself against it. He praises a certain man, Agathocles, for knowing how to use cruelties well, and for finding great success through criminal means. While we do not call Agathocles virtuous for having the gall to kill all who oppose him, Machiavelli calls him the most virtuous, for he had the wisdom to see how evil could be so usefully employed. Machiavelli's praise of Agathocles would be well-founded and correct if his claim about man being solely evil were true. A Machiavellian ruler does not rule for the sake of others. That would suggest some kind of weakness. No, a Machiavellian ruler rules for his own sake and own glory. Anything he does for his subjects is only done for them insofar as it helps him gain more power and security. In short, a Machiavellian ruler trusts only himself, is self-made, and does everything for his own benefit. Chesterton does not agree that man is solely evil, but he does not say that man is solely good. Chesterton's world is not so black and white. He states that man is distinctly good and distinctly evil. Man experienced a fall, and a fall suggests that there was some kind of right start and wrong end, a progression down from some location up. Chesterton says that man is like a person born standing on his head. He is not meant to be standing on his head, but is there nonetheless. That person can stay on his head, but has the free will to want to flip right side up. Man is not perfect, and so he has no place believing in himself. The very purpose of a ruler is to lead others. So there he has no business focusing on himself. And if man has fallen, if he has his start somewhere wrong, how on earth is he to be his own maker? Machiavelli seemed at first to be right, because it is easy to dismiss man's flaws by saying that he is simply evil. An inherently evil being cannot be blamed for being evil. It is his nature. But Machiavelli is not right. Man is not just evil. Man has the capacity for good just as much as he has the capacity for evil, so his evil actions cannot be justified. Socrates likens goodness to the sun, and I find that very fitting. Just as you cannot look directly at the sun but can see everything by its light, you cannot fully understand goodness, but through it you can find knowledge and understanding. Along this same pattern, I would like to suggest that evil can be likened to the moon. The moon reflects a dim version of the sun's light, and by means of that light you can clearly see and understand the moon, as well as see enough of your surroundings to get the general idea of what is around you, maybe filling in some of the details for yourself. Likewise, evil works off of a distorted and twisted version of the good, giving you just enough to create your own desired knowledge and personal truth. Machiavelli chooses to believe that men are inherently evil. This is the logical choice at first. The moon may not be as brilliant as the sun, but it can be gazed upon and understood. The dim light of the moon is not sufficient enough to expose all discrepancies. And ultimately, that is what Machiavelli wants. It is not logical for him to disregard man's goodness, but in the light of the moon, that decision may not be noticed. It is not possible to speak well of cruelties, as Machiavelli suggests, but who in the moon's dominion is listening? Chesterton acknowledges man's fall into darkness and demands that he look upon the rising sun. Machiavelli, unwilling to abide the blazing truth of the mysterious sun, denies man the sorely needed turn to the east and cloaks him in the deception of darkness. Once I reached this conclusion, I turned again to the round-faced man who had inquired upon my perplexed state, and I said to him, Now I see how I once wanted to agree with Machiavelli. He was sly in his omission of goodness, and through man's dark state led me to what I thought to be a logical and sadly real conclusion. He captured my attention with nearly reasonable ideas, but in truth, his words lacked a pure logicality and fell behind what is verily real. The man's eyes twinkled, and with a slight grin he responded, "The moon is utterly reasonable, and the moon is the mother of lunatics, and so to that I add, the fox hunts it best."